Welcome to Beacon of Creation, a weekly podcast on game design through the lens of Magic the Gathering. I'm Tim.
And I'm Mono Whiteboarder, also known as Peter.
We just wrapped up the qualifiers for the third Design League. We're just going to talk about all these cool cards that got created for the Design League, what makes them cool, what challenges prompted them, and just highlight a card for each of the people who qualified, which includes you.
Yeah, I snuck in at the very end.
So our first challenge was, long story short, it was a standard playable common.
Our first winner was Cord 22 with Composter's Feast. 1 green for an artifact food. When Composter's Feast enters or leaves the battlefield, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. Then it has 2 taps, sacrifice Composter's Feast, you gain 3 life.
So enters or leaves the battlefield, make a 1/1. You're basically casting a food. It's a food with the food text for 1 mana. And then also when it enters or it leaves, you get that 1/1.
There was that red card, Experimental Synthesizer, which was 1 red, enters, leaves, you get a card. This is somewhat similar. Making a token when enters, leaves has a lot of relevance. In you're limited, you drop this, you get a 1/1. A little later on, you get 3 life and a 1/1. That's a good rate. For 3 mana, 2 1/1s and a 3 life, that's a great rate. But definitely can be kind of like this weird role player in like an artifact aristocrat-y sacrifice deck of some sort.
Yeah, this was the winner. People really liked that it like seemed to have a through line of life gain. So you're creating 2 pests, like the Strixhaven pests, if you remember those. These are 1/1s when they die, you gain 1 life. You can imagine like a green card or a black card that's a higher rarity card that cares about whenever you gain life. This is going to trigger that potentially 3 different times because, you know, when you eat the food, you gain some life. When your first pest dies, you gain some life. When your second pest dies, you gain some life. So it feels like there are enough hooks in there.
Yeah, you didn't want the judges being lost and kind of confused of like, okay, this card seems neat. What deck does it go into? I think your comments at the outset were, I just want to see the card and know what deck I'm putting it into. And I think this does a really good job of like, this can kind of go into like a mid-rangey, grindy value deck in green that's doing some weird artifact sacking or bouncing shenanigans.
Yeah. Actually, in this challenge, I was the only judge that didn't give this like maximum points.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the skepticism that I had was that I wasn't totally sure that that this was big enough for a grindy deck.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't confident that the gaining life was going to be guaranteed to be important enough. I probably don't want to be spending mana sacrificing a food very often in that kind of deck. I feel like a slow deck in standard can go much, much bigger than this.
Yeah, I wonder how many judges gave this card points as like a good sideboard card as well. Like a card that like, or maybe not even sideboard, maybe like a card that's good because it's good in the aggro matchup. This card comes down, gives you a blocker, then on turn 2, turn 3, whenever you need it, it gains you 3 life and gives you another blocker. Those blockers then also gain you life. Like the aggro deck is just like, what the heck is this? You know?
One of the things when we were kind of looking through the challenge here is that I would say all but one of the submissions for this challenge were 1 or 2 mana. And then the only one that wasn't 1 or 2 mana had Delve. So basically every card that was submitted for this challenge was 1 or 2 mana.
Yeah. I think a lot of people also kind of thought about red cards too. It looks like there's a lot of red cards or maybe aggro cards generally, because those are really easy to fit into a slot as well. Hey, this is a good shock. Throw that in the deck.
And looking at a lot of the cards that are common that have seen play from the last year or two, yeah, that's basically all 1 and 2 mana cards.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a common that makes it, it's going to be hard to be a 5 mana common that makes it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess unless it has another mode, like Lorien Revealed from the Lord of the Rings set, which is 3 mana, draw 3 cards, and island cycling for 1. Well, that's still sort of a 1 mana card that also has a 5 mana option.
Oh, man. That would have been kind of... I wonder what the judges would have thought of that. If you kind of... Basically, the text of the card doesn't matter. It just has this one extra mode that basically sneaks it into constructed playable. That'd be kind of funny. That would have been a bold choice.
It is a very sweet card. Like Lorien Revealed. I was like picking up just some random cheap cards the other day. And Luring Revealed is not cheap. It's like $3 because every commander deck kind of wants, it's occasionally been in and out of Modern because 1 mana land cycling is actually quite a nice effect.
Mm-hmm.
The other funny thing about this actual challenge winner is that a very similar card actually got previewed for Bloomburrow. Have you seen this?
Oh, no.
So there's Carrot Cake, 1 and a white. When it enters and when you sack it, create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token and scry 1. So it's a food. When it enters and when you sack it, you get a 1/1.
Oh, wow.
Very similar. And this
is WotC keeping tabs on the design league?
Keeping tabs in the future and then printing cards that come out at the same time. I guess we'll find out if Carrot Cake does actually make it inconstructed. Then I was wrong.
Oh my gosh, we have a great test. Score. That's so true.
Yeah. All right, next up, the second challenge here was basically to make a card with a new enchantment or artifact subtype. So if you think of like Clue, Equipment, Aura, what else was there? What other kind of common subtypes are there? Well, it doesn't matter. You don't have to use an existing one. You got to make a brand new one. And I guess the main thing of this challenge is you have to justify why that new subtype kind of matters.
Mm-hmm. Vehicles is kind of like that. What I think of in that more narrow, like you'll have a good chunk of cards. There'll be a predominant thing in the set, but maybe then it's just 1 or 2 one-offs versus like equipment. There's tons of equipment.
Our winner for that was from Gardu. This is a little bit of a tricky card to read because it's not quite a DFC. It's actually closer to the old Kamigawa flip cards where there's art in the middle and then there's card text at the top and then upside down card text on the bottom. So you have sort of like 2 miniature cards that are on the same card, and what we'll see is you're going to be flipping that card upside down. So the card here is called Production Line, is 3 mana, and it says cast either side, flip whenever it untaps. The top line here is for Production Line is tap, create a 0/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. If you cast this, you're going to tap it, you're going to get your Thopter, and then it's going to untap and then flip around to the other side, which is called Upgrade Facility, which taps, put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature you control.
You can start off on whichever side's most favorable for you. So maybe if you are on turn 3, you haven't built up your board, you can drop your artifact and make a 0/1. But if it's later in the game, you might drop it, pump your entire board with your Steel Overseer alike. And then once you do that, it's going to flip over, and now you're just making a 0/1, and you kind of have to wait a turn. It's got that Bounty of the Luxa feel of like you're alternating modes. So, okay, I put a flood counter on it, and I get this effect. I remove the flood counter. Now I get this different effect.
It's a fun pull. The subtype for this card, which I didn't say in the beginning, is Artifact Mechanism. So it's kind of implying that we're going to see maybe 5, 10, 15 of these mechanisms in a set. And a mechanism is something that flips upside down each time it untaps.
I think we briefly, or maybe it was just me. Maybe it wasn't a we thing. Maybe it was just me entertained the idea of a similar card in one of the You Make the Packs of like this flipping card.
Yeah.
And I put it to the side because I was concerned about the memory issues. And I think even the judges mentioned like some concern about like flipping the card around and making sure that you untap it the correct direction.
Yeah, it was fun, splashy. I think my feedback at the time was you don't have a lot of rule space because you've got this like reminder text in there. So you have like 1.5 lines of rule text space. So you got 15 words maybe maximum, which felt like it maybe limited your ability to use this subtype on many cards. So it felt like you're aiming at 5 cards in a set rather than 10 or 15 or 20.
And I really feel like Gardu was kind of unique in that aspect of most people were designing cards that felt like they could go in multiple sets down the line.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get a good chunk of them into the set. And I feel like Gardu was more like, all I need to get is to this threshold that was set kind of by the challenge. That's all I'm shooting for. And I'm just putting and I'm just wanting to make sure that the subtype seems as relevant as possible. And I think the subtype is really relevant to these cards because they're so unique in the way they operate.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
something that Gardew also nailed with this card that was, I think, a running theme throughout the design challenge was like, you don't have extra text when you're in the design league. Like, you put your card into the qualifier thread and that's it. That's all the judges have to go off of. So any ambiguity can result in your card kind of falling off. I don't think this card has a ton of ambiguity. Like, it is very clear in what it's doing, yet it's doing an extremely novel thing. And that's what I think Gardew really nailed the home run on. I'm like, this is a lot of innovation, but extraordinarily clear for the judges to process.
Yeah. Really solid card. I think probably the thing that kept me back, I think I was at a 4 on this card. The thing that kept me back is that, like, if I'm playing this card, I'm expecting to make 1 million tokens and have a gigantic board. And that's where the mechanism, like the physical flipping of the card and keeping track of where to flip to is going to be at its worst, because my board is gigantic. The start of my turn, I'm untapping 18 permanents. I'm going to mess this up, a portion of the time pretty consistently. The next challenge was you had to make a mechanic called Courtesy. What it did, you had like total flexibility on. Is it going to be a keyword, ability word, batch, card type, whatever you want to do. But it has to be called Courtesy. And you just have to give us a card that's going to fit in sort of like a court intrigue, conspiracy, Game of Thrones, memory called Empire kind of stuff. This card is going to be placed in a world where people are negotiating with each other, maybe multiplayer style.
Our winner from this qualifier was Perry K with Party Animal. 1 red for a 3/3, Creature Beast Noble. It's a rare that has haste and courtesy. Whenever another player attacks, if they aren't attacking you, they exile the top card of their library. They may play it until end of turn. We have a little art description from Perry K. An anthropomorphic boar-faced beast wearing a powdered wig and extravagant Georgian-era jacket and hose. The jacket is crimson with fine gold detailing. He is carrying a tray of precariously stacked champagne flutes as he dances through a crowded ballroom.
Party Animal. Very funny.
Yeah. Really leans heavily into the multiplayer aspect. And I think the judges like that, which is really funny because I spent so much of this qualifier trying to avoid a card that felt kind of reliant on the multiplayer. Because this card is only working in multiplayer. You can't play this in a 1v1. Or it's just a 3/3 haste. It's just not that exciting.
Yeah.
Perry K crushed it on the flavor with this card. Courtesy, triggering off another player, like dissuading another player for attacking you, nails the like multiplayer environment and kind of giving you that little bit of extra protection. It encourages attacking, which is a huge thing in limited. So it's just doing a lot of really neat things in a pretty simple package.
Yeah, this was one of the highest scoring cards that we'll talk about today for me. I was really happy with what you might call like a soft deterrent. Like, people can still attack you if you've got Party Animal out. And if you're the arch enemy, the Party Animal's not going to save you. But in the beginning of a game, it's sort of like a goad. It's sort of like the vows or something like that, where people want to attack, maybe like Monarch or the Initiative. People want to attack somebody. We want to get the combat rolling. We're rewarding people for playing creatures early, but without this just like full snowball. Hey, I don't really want to attack Tim because he's got the Party Animal. I'm going to draw a card, so I'll attack Mono White Border instead. We got a couple designs like that, and I see a lot of potential in that kind of space of reasons to attack that aren't like hardcore only attack that person dogpile stuff. I don't know, just makes the multiplayer game start moving and have a little more combat in it.
Yeah. It kind of, because one of the things that happens or can happen in multiplayer is that everyone's so afraid to attack that nothing ever happens. Well, this takes that away. It's like, attack, get your benefit, keep the game moving. Once one person attacks, other people are going to want to attack, or else they're missing out on that advantage. Courtesy, I feel like a really tricky word to use, but I think that made a lot of the designs more interesting.
It was pretty challenging, I would say. Yeah. This is a rare, so maybe this is one of the stronger incentives in Perry K's mind. But I think another thing that I liked about this card, and it felt like it would be a fun card to play even outside of limited, is like if I'm encouraging another play to attack with their creature that isn't actually that great in combat, but it trades with another creature, that attacking player still gets their card back. They get like an impulse draw, basically. From the attacking player's point of view, they're killing an opponent's creature and they get a card back to replace their crappy creature. So they're having a great time. And then as the controller of the party animal, I'm loving it because 2 of my opponent's creatures died. And, that the opponent got a card back, one opponent got a card back for that, I can feel totally okay with.
A lot of creatures this round. Part of the incentive there is like you needed to demonstrate that this could appear on a lot of cards in a set. An easy way to make sure that your mechanic appears on a lot of cards is put it on creatures, which are the most common card type in a set.
Yeah. I tried to use that as sort of a benchmark for evaluating a lot of these. A lot of my comments are like, can we get to 10 or more cards with this, 15 or more cards with this mechanic? Can this be one of the focus, effects of a set? And it's hard to do that. Like, give me a mechanic that you can make 15 cards for in one set is actually very, very, very hard. And especially when you have to use a word that is, I don't know, not automatically or not easily translated into Magic combat. So I guess this was one of the more fun ones for me to review because the bar was really high, and so people had to try hard to get their cards to meet it.
Mm-hmm. I will say courtesy being a noun, I feel like made it harder of a challenge as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like verbs and adjectives are easier to design mechanics for than nouns.
Mm-hmm. All right. Our next challenge was to make a kind of like a face commander for like a commander precon. And there was also an extra restriction here that had to be from the short list of existing planes. So we were returning to the plane. Something new is about it. Give us a new vision of both this character that you're returning to and also what's maybe going to be different about this plane based on this one card. And the winner for that one was from Bradley Rose. And it was a commander that I know Bradley has played personally before, Lutri, the Otter. But this version is called Lutri Prismari Pupil. It's blue and a red for legendary creature Elemental Otter. Spells you cast with an enchantment, instant, or sorcery subtype have affinity for elementals. For example, the subtypes Aura and Lesson count for this ability. A spell with affinity for elementals costs 1 less to cast for each elemental you control. And then the other part of Lutri here is Sagecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an enchantment, instant, or sorcery spell, you may exile the top card of your library. If you do, you may play that card until you exile another card with Lutri.
This might be my favorite card from the whole qualifier round.
Mm-hmm.
I think from knowing that Brad is a big Lutri fan, Lutri having this iconic status in Commander as being banned upon release. The rules text, the reminder text in the card gets me. Is like, that's some great reminder text for clarity's purposes. And then even Sagecraft instead of Magecraft, it all just works for me. I think this card is a lot of fun. The flavor text home run as well.
Yeah. One of the things that people didn't often hit in this challenge was giving us like, hey, what's going to be different about this plane? What's going to be cool about this plane now that we're coming back to it? There were a couple that actually did do that pretty well. There was like a Mecha Snapdax that I thought showed us what was going to be different about Ikoria.
Yep.
For Lutri here, seeing Sagecraft, seeing like, okay, it's not just going to be instants and sorceries like Magecraft. It's also going to include enchantments. That actually opens up like a lot of deck building, and like you can even rerun some of the cards from Strixhaven with Sagecraft, and they'd probably still be fun. And so you could easily see 10, 15, 20 Sagecraft cards being printed. And then there was this extra little juice here, like if you want to go super deep on your deck building, put instants, enchantments, and sorceries with subtypes in them in your deck. is going to power up lessons to be playable strength. It's going to power up your auras to be like more cyclable. It's going to power up your sorceries, your removal spells to be a little bit less bad for you to cast in Commander.
Yeah.
Lutri themselves is an elemental, so it's sort of like a little is it buddy to begin with. It's sort of just making all of your instant sorcery and enchantment cards with subtypes cost one less no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to put another elemental or two onto the battlefield, you want to make some of the elementals from Strixhaven. Now you can get that discount to like a 2 or 3 or 4, but you really only need the one for it to, start to grease the wheels.
Yeah. Finally, a home for all those arcane cards that you've been holding on to, just waiting to play. But yeah, it is a really cool hook. I think that was probably the hardest part of the challenge. What's the thing that makes somebody look at this deck on the shelf and be like, I want to buy that pre-release deck or that pre-con deck? And that was a really hard hook. And I think both of these lines of text accomplished that very well. And you can even go as far as like picturing some of the weird reprints that end up in the deck.
Absolutely.
Which is always fun.
Shrine or Saga or whatever.
Yeah. I wonder what's the biggest instant or sorcery with a subtype on it? I'm just going to look up.
There's like Mascot Exhibition, the 7 mana make a bunch of tokens lesson.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
I'm sure there's got to be something more than 7.
I know. Unfortunately, I have a 20% keyboard, and every once in a while I run into needing a key that I don't know how to get.
A 20% keyboard?
Sorry, no, a 40% keyboard.
Oh my god! I was like, what's a 20% keyboard?
20% keyboard is just one line of keys. Yeah, that'd be pretty crazy. I'd try it. I'd try it once.
Someone link us the 20% keyboard.
Maybe a keyboard that can be used with only one hand. Maybe that's 20%. Cut it in half vertically, bisect it.
Like you have to chord just to type the alphabet on a 20% keyboard. Because it's only 21 keys, right? It's not. There's more letters than that.
Yeah.
Shift Q is Y. Shift W is U.
Yeah, I have on my keyboard. I have an up and a down, and that's it. And then I have Shift 2 to access some different numbers. But yeah, I don't know. The thing I'm running into is I don't know where my carrots are, so I can't do less than or greater than. I have to like go into the advanced search on Scryfall.
All right.
Well. Sorry, I can't find the best big giant instant or sorcery, but you do get a lot of free keyboard talk.
Yeah, love that. I think for me, the only downside of this card, or the thing that I was most concerned about, is as a face card, there is a lot of lines of text on here.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I really needed to make this face cardy, we would need to lose the affinity for elementals, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like the least essential part. And if it just said like spells you cast with an enchantment, instant, or sorcery subtype cost 2 less to cast, that like takes 2 lines of text off the card and probably gives you roughly the same gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
And this one won by a lot. There's a lot of innovation in this challenge. People were submitting cards that had a lot of pieces to them, but it was hard to hit the full target of like, this can go as the face card for one of these decks. This is like an appealing thing that people will want to do. Next up was a real curveball of a challenge. I don't know that anyone could have could have guessed this. And that was a challenge where you had to use either the title of your card or your flavor text had to come from a poem. And that poem is the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And then the other component of that, besides just flavor, is that the card should be the member of a new cycle. Like we might have all 5 of the guild, like 5 guild mages in a set, something like that.
Yeah, I was pretty nervous going into this challenge when I first read it. Without reading the poem, is there gonna be enough here for a Universes Beyond Magic set? All about just the one poem? Like,
yeah.
I think I ended up reading the poem like 6 or 7 times, just going through it over and over again. And reading it out loud, you get a little bit more of the rhythm and you catch a lot more things. So like I must have looked like a crazy person just like constantly reading this poem out loud. So it ended up being a lot of fun, and this challenge was a huge hit among the contestants. The winner though from Janome. How do we pronounce that? How have you been pronouncing that?
I was supposed to ask that. Yeah. Janawami is how I pronounce it in my head.
Okay, I'm gonna do Janawami. So qualifier 5 winner was Janawami with Duskfall Envoy, 2 red for a creature wolf spirit 2/1 with flying, and whenever you cast a spell that's white, blue, black, or green, Duskfall Envoy gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And I have seen the Eternal Footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. T.S. Eliot, Prufrock. I felt like there were 2 ways to tackle this challenge. You were either going to approach this challenge of like, I have a piece of flavor text that I want to put on a card and work from there, or you have the title of the card and work down. I know I was really locked in on I want the title of the card to come from the poem. This is a pretty good card. This is going to end some games.
Absolutely.
4/1 flying from whenever you cast your off color.
One component of it is that it has to be cyclable.
Mm-hmm.
And you can imagine what the cycling's supposed to be on this, right?
Yeah.
Like
super easy.
You've got a red card, and then it names all 4 other colors. And so you do that for each color.
I think a quick read through the judges' comments, that was like a big sticking point of like, how can I see the cycle? They wanted to be able to see that cycle right away. This is the one challenge that you weren't a judge on, correct?
That's true.
What's your impression? What do you think this poem's about based on this card? Any ideas?
I don't know. If the countryside being devastated by a shadow fox.
Yeah, not terrible. Not far off. You're not far off. Yeah.
I judged on all 5 of the other qualifiers, but I didn't judge this one.
Mm-hmm.
And the intensity of what you get, you got a 3-mana flyer, which is, maybe fine, slightly borderline in red. Triggering this is about as easy, maybe not in constructed, but in limited is about as easy as you would imagine for the amount of power you're getting.
Mm-hmm. Generally, the judges were pretty generous when it came to the knobs. Yeah, is this maybe a little juiced? Sure. But can I see what it's doing and where it is, and is it within the realm of possibility? Okay, then yeah, I'm still going to rate this card highly. I'm going to rate it highly on the design aspect. We're focused on you displaying your design chops. What
set would you want to have this cycle in?
That's a good question. Maybe the set is about having a distinctly primary color and a distinctly secondary color. Like in the deck that wants the Duskfall Envoy, most of your spells are actually white, but your red splash is these really powerful cards that care about your other color. Because if you can get 2 off-color spells with this guy on the battlefield, that's scary. That is going to deal some damage.
Yeah, interesting card. It's funny because I read all these cards earlier, but because I have to judge them, I haven't read them 10 times each, So it's fun to kind of hang out with one of these cards for a while and think about it. It's kind of novel that you want to splash just like a kind of aggressive flyer. That's not the kind of card you splash. You splash like a removal spell or like a heavy bomb. And here, if you have no other red cards in your deck, this is easiest to trigger.
It was really interesting in general seeing all of the different approaches to the poem and how people viewed it and how they wanted to express the poem. But definitely looked like it paid off.
And our last qualifier was that you're making an archetype uncommon, so a gold uncommon. The kind of twist here was that you're given 5 cards, 5 commons, and whatever your gold card was, it had to work with those 2 commons. I'll kind of summarize the cards here just real quick. We had Warlord's Elite, which is a white creature that's cheaper than normal, but you also have to tap artifacts, creatures, or lands. So you either have to pay for the full mana or also kind of convoke, sort of. We had Academy Wall, which is an 0/5 wall. And then whenever you cast instants or sorceries, you loot. Vampire's Kiss, a black card that just makes target opponent lose 2 life. You gain 2 life, and you get 2 blood tokens. You had Vault Robber, a little dwarf rogue who can exile cards from the graveyard to create treasures. And then you had Mulch, which is a kind of a classic card. Look at the top 4 cards. get the land cards into your hand and put the non-land cards into your graveyard.
Yeah, this challenge had a lot to think about, and I think that a lot of the contestants really dug into how much there was to think about with this challenge.
Yeah, when I'm judging, I also like when I have a lot of things to think about, like not just how cool is the card, but also how well does it really align with the two cards that it's supposed to align with, and also how believable, in addition to those two cards, how believable is that the rest of the set can also support this theme.
Mm-hmm.
The winner here was from Pat, and it was Ambitious Apprentice, a blue and a black for a 1/1 flying vampire wizard. When this creature enters the battlefield, create a blood token, and then whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So we've got sort of the draw a second card theme in Dimir this time.
Really evocative, really strong. Draw 2 cards. You instantly see how that works with both Academy Wall and Vampire's Kiss. Both of them have a looting aspect.
Either the blood token, blood is sort of looting, and then this wall, whenever you cast instants of sorceries, you're looting. So you have 2 cards that are like drawing your second card each turn. You're not drawing a whole card, you're drawing and discarding, but it's good enough for this vampire here.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just did a Eldraine flashback draft this morning. Both my losses were against the blue-red draw a second card deck. And one of the kind of key cards in that deck is Fairy Vandal, which is a very similar card.
Mm-hmm.
2 mana flash flyer, and it's a 1/2, and it has the same clause of whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's quite a potent card. It was very effective in both the games that I lost.
Yeah, this card starts off as a 1/1, but you're probably cracking that blood token on your next turn, so it's becoming a flying 2/2.
Yeah.
I think Pat got a point from every judge and got the highest score. Yeah. It was an absolute home run, but it looks so effortless because this card just is so solid across the board.
Yeah. I think that this card just like absolutely maxed out the solid card half of the challenge, and maybe isn't quite there on the innovation side, but there's enough other things to juggle in this challenge. Is your archetype that you're making up believable? Does it actually work with both of the commons that we've got here? Like there were a bunch of other things stacking up, and really just the most solid card, the just like most playable, believable archetype, I think won out here.
I think the designers all approached it similar to how I did, which I went out and I listed everything. Like I made a theoretical set in my head of like, this is what the set is. I instantly was drawn to the enemy colors. I thought those matched up way better than the allied colors did. But I think looking back, I think a lot of people stuck to allied colors. But I thought the enemy colors ended up actually meshing together a lot more logically to me. But I think most people kind of, this is what my theoretical archetypes in my set would be if I was constructing a set for this. And then some people maybe even went out. I know Pat had 2 designs. People made multiple designs thinking about this and then submitted the one that was their favorite. And honestly, I think if Pat had submitted their other design, I think that design also would have won. Because that design was equally as solid and good and just like, here's the archetype, here's a card that's really good in that archetype, here's a card you want to play, and it's doing something you want to do.
Yeah. Comboing a wall with other stuff was pretty tough. That was something that people tried to do and struggled with in some cases.
I think the 2 cards for me that were kind of right out of like, I understood what I wanted the archetype to be, but I did not want to touch the cards were Mulch and Academy Wall. I was just like, I don't really want to deal with trying to incorporate those cards into what I'm doing. So I was instantly drawn to the Warlord's Elite, Vampire's Kiss, and Vault Robber. It seems like a lot of people were drawn to the blue-black cards, though. They instantly connected with that archetype. Yeah. I feel like the Academy Wall is maybe the most Johnny of the cards in this group. Maybe Warlord's Elite is a little bit more Johnny, but that feels a little spiky, too. Trying to cheat that 4/4 in.
Yeah, the Elite's just kind of an efficient.
Yeah.
These are all existing Magic cards, but it's just kind of an efficient card. Either you are forced to play it late because all your creatures died, or you're curving out real strong by getting your 4/4 on the board. I thought the Vampire's Kiss was like the most dangerous thing to try to build around because it's
really
the weakest of the cards. it's kind of do nothing. It kind of, you'd have to be like crazy aggressive for that life loss to matter. Um, I guess maybe it just has enough hooks being, a spell. That spell works with the wall.
That's interesting. I think I latched on to white black as the archetype that I thought I could kind of connect pretty quickly. But I think that was also because I saw a very clear aggro through line. And my initial approach was like, I want to make a good archetype, but I also just want to make a card where like the judges can see the play pattern. So I started out, I just wanted Vampire's Kiss into Warlord's Elite into 4-drop that made Warlord's Elite really good. My card I ended up on was way different than that. Went a different route, but still just focused on the aggro game plan.
Yeah. All right. And we got 3 people who got into the tournament from qualifier points. So these are people who scored highly across all the challenges. These are not going to be new challenges. These are going to be other cards that did well in some of the challenges we just talked about.
Yeah, so first up, we want to talk about another card from this archetype uncommon challenge. Was from Provocative. This was their highest point total on a single card. Came runner-up in the challenge. Tartic's Trawler, 6 blue-black, for a 5/3 Nightmare Warlock. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. Once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. You're getting a very expensive 5/3 that's cost can be reduced as you cast more instants and sorceries.
Yeah.
And then you can, once you play it, once a turn, you can recast one of those instants and sorceries. Kind of like Flashback.
Yeah, this is kind of like Muldrotha, which is a super popular commander during each of your turns. It's sort of the opposite. You can play a land or permanent. You can cast one of your permanents from your graveyard every turn. This card can kind of flash back instant or sorcery every turn.
Yeah. Kess Dissident Mage is the Grixis commander that has literally this text during each of your turns. Cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard, and then exile it.
Oh, it's exactly the same text. It's exactly the Kess text. Wow. Okay. Well, now I feel even better because my feedback, I was a little low on this card. This felt like a rare, not an uncommon. It kind of nudges upward to me.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool card. Let me be clear.
It's a tricky point because Provocative went for like this really high costed archetype uncommon, which is as a brave move. So you're hoping that you have to then add the reduction so that it's actually playable.
Yeah.
But you're hoping that it's enough of a hurdle that it kind of brings the power level down to uncommon.
Yeah, I can see how some levers were being pulled to try to get this in the right zone. So breaking it down, it's 8 mana, costs 1 less for each instant and sorcery. So if you're playing it if you're not trying that hard, if you're playing Sealed or something like that, this feels like it comes in as like a 6 mana card. You can get 2 instants of sorceries either cast or looted away by turn 6. And I think the other thing that was trying to bring it down power level wise is to bring it down to like a 5/3. You'd normally think, hey, this big expensive thing like a Talarian Terror or like a 5/5, it would be a big burly thing. There were attempts made to bring this down to like a more sane level, and I respect it. I can see it, but I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe this card, gave up some points in the like how real is this card to get some of that sweet innovation flavor, and it definitely feels innovative, and it definitely felt like a swing for the fences, which Provocative really needed. Provocative was a little far off of qualifying. I think they were at 2 or 3 points when the qualifier started.
Which, the underdog.
Yeah, which in like normal circumstances would have meant they weren't in range to qualify reasonably. But with Pat's victory and with all 6 judges giving away qualifier points, it meant there were a lot of points up for grabs and theoretically 2 qualifier spots open. And so Pat got in through the qualifier 6, and then Provocative swooped up to grab a total of 8 points by the end of it. So big jump.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it does fulfill the archetype uncommon kind of thing of like I take this card, third pick or whatever, after I took 2 blue cards, and then I'm like, I'm in. Let me do this. Super splashable. Like if I'm playing a 3-color, 4-color deck, I'm super happy to play in Tarctic Trawler. It doesn't need to like hit turn 4 or 5 like a Tellarian Tower to really murder people. It can wait until turn 6, 7, 8. My opponent's depleted all their resources. Now the game is mine if I'm not dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We got a lot of these kind of like value engine-y submissions in this challenge. Like while this is hanging around, you're gonna get free. You're gonna draw free cards every turn. You're gonna recast spells. You're gonna get like a value engine sort of thing, which is a little dangerous rarity wise. Like the if you provide too much value to me, you start to leave the realm of uncommon, and you have to get bumped up to rare.
Yeah, and I think that is our natural like tendency as designers is we want to make little funny weird engine cards. I think it's the Johnny or Jenny in all of us maybe speaking out. So it makes a lot of sense that we ended up with some of these very fiddly engines that you kind of had to make work.
Rather than like a nice card that like does one thing better if you're on the right team, a lot of these cards were, I'm going to hang around, and in the right deck, I'm going to just keep giving you stuff. Our next person in the tournament on qualifier points was Crypt Rat. They had, I think you said like a couple points in a bunch of different challenges.
Yeah, they I think racked up 7 points in the first 4 qualifier challenges. And I think it was 2, 2, 2, and 1. That was their point total. So we tried to highlight the highest point grabber, and with Crypt Rat, we then had to pick one of their highest point grabbers.
Well, the Design League this time around was all about tie breaking, as we'll get into later. The card here was Atarkan Battle Belch. A red mana for an instant at common. This was from the common challenge, the constructed playable common. This card has a kicker, and the kicker is exile a creature card from your graveyard with power 4 or greater. You can kick this spell, not for extra mana, but just by exiling a big creature. Atarkan Battle Belch deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If Atarkan Battle Belch was kicked, instead, it deals 4 damage to that permanent instead.
Deal 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker is like a card that would see standard play in certain contexts. And then the fact that this has kicker that bumps up to 4 damage makes it a really versatile removal spell. And that's the kind of card that like decks are going to be looking for in some numbers. If there's like a red mid-range deck, this card is going to help them in the early game and stay relevant later in the game. This probably, because it doesn't hit players, isn't going to go into your aggro deck, but it really depends on what the situation is, and it could. But in your control mid-rangey shells with red or splashing red, this card becomes really relevant.
When I was judging these, I was looking through all the different standard, all the different standard decks, and also some other recent standard decks that played red. I couldn't find a deck that this could have fit in from the last couple of years, but I do like the card overall. I think the technology is kind of nice. Hey, it's kicker based on your deck composition. Are you able to, play enough creatures with high power on the card, like not just with equipment, not just with counters, but like actual big creatures? Can you play enough of those? Can you get them in your graveyard? And if you can, you get like a mana efficient, mid-size removal spell.
This was an early card that Crypt Rat did a lot of tweaking on, and it started out as just exile a creature card from a graveyard, and then it dealt damage equal to the exiled card's power instead. I kind of threw out the idea to them of like, maybe is that too easy of a kicker? Does that make it too strong? Does that make it too relevant late game? It feels a little out of control. So I kind of suggested, what if you just incorporated the power qualifier into the card itself?
Yeah. That did make it much more Tarkiri, right?
Yeah. I think I was trying to push like go really all into the Tarka flavor, and like maybe like dragons are dying and you can give it a nice name. And I think Crypt Rat wisely was like, hold on. We can just kick or exile power 4 or greater, give it a nice little flavorful name, and that's enough. And I think they were 100% right.
Yeah. Battle Belch.
hmm
They're the big like ogres or something that are Atarka's army. They're like battering rams and stuff like that. I can imagine them. Or I guess Atarka, maybe she's got a big belch.
Yeah, I thought it was supposed to be like the dragons, like burping after they're done with one of their meals or one of their hunts that people are bringing them.
All right.
I think this card was really emblematic of a lot of Cryptrat's mission of just like extremely solid card. You can see the space that it's working in. Put something out there that, yep, this meets the criteria for the challenge. It's going to work, and it's a card that I could see myself wanting to play.
Yeah. All right, and then our last person who's in on qualifier points is on this podcast. It's not me.
It's me. It is me. But I did. Tim was going to take over my spot, and Tim's. I'm coming off the judge. He's coming off the judge board to claim a spot.
I'm going to descend from heaven in order to mingle with the mortals. Yeah. All right, why don't you read it?
All right. So this was from the Proof Rock Challenge. Card is Let Us Go. It's 1 green for a sorcery with Escalate. Exile a green card from your graveyard. Pay this cost for each mode chosen beyond the first. Return target land card from your graveyard to your hand. Target player shuffles their graveyard. Then that player puts it on the top or bottom of their library. Target creature gets +2/+2 and must be blocked this turn if able. One of the things is like if I'm doing universes beyond this T.S. Eliot poem, I want everything to be about this poem, like the actual poem, its structure, the themes in the poem, rhymes in the, like I want everything to be about the poem. And so I kind of very quickly settled on like I wanted to talk about the use of repetition in the poem and how he repeats certain phrases. So there's like 6 phrases that he repeats. And so I actually wrote out the 6 phrases I would do that would be the titles of the cycle. And then I was trying to figure out how do I get the sense of like repeating the same thing over and over again without making a repetitive play pattern. And then finally I figured out Escalate is like, I can escalate it and have you exile the same thing or do the same thing to escalate it. And then that'll get you your sense of repetition. And I think Ludos was on the judges, and he figured it out. He solved the puzzle that I hid in my own card.
Are the modes related to the poem or just the names of the cards?
I tried to get the modes slightly related to the poem. Okay. Let Us Go. So the poem itself, at least the way I interpreted it, was about not doing anything until it's too late and kind of watching the world crumple, and yet you're too nervous, you're too naive, you're too foolish to do anything about it, and then the world just kind of crumples. So I tried to make it, each mode was a little bit something happening a little bit worse. So the first one is kind of like, this is okay, like return a land. It's very like, it's actually kind of beneficial. The second one was like shuffle your graveyard. That's a big change. And then the third one was more like a violent thing. Not a straight fight, but you're attacking and something's got to block and theoretically something's going to die in this instance.
Alrighty, yeah. So sorcery. We're going to target our creature here. +2/+2 must be blocked. And then we're probably escalating once or twice to get one of these other effects. So I'm either going to get a land back while I do that, or I'm going to stack my graveyard on top of my deck because it's all juice. Okay.
I think my favorite text on the card is actually the shuffling your graveyard and putting it on top or bottom as like, okay, graveyard. Yeah. It's a nice little creative graveyard hate, but then it's also this regrowth that's not regrowth because having 2 modes that gave you a card back felt a little bit too strong.
Yeah.
Especially with the fact that the last one is almost usually going to be a removal spell.
Kind of a fight card, yeah.
Yeah, that last mode is probably the mode that you're choosing every time, and then the other 2 modes are the modes you're stacking on top of it. If you want to. The exile a green card so that you can kind of get the junk out of your graveyard if you want to. Also felt kind of fun. But this, I will say that Proof Rock Challenge was the one that really made me, I feel like, a lot more try and figure out a lot more what I was doing when I was submitting cards and what I was trying to express. I think something I struggled with in the early challenges was like I was making cards that fit the challenge, but like didn't feel like they had a lot of direction or velocity headed in a direction. They're just like, these cards do meet the challenge and have card text on them, but like they don't feel purposeful. And I think when I hit Proof Rock, I really started to get purposeful, which was important because I was really far behind in the qualifier points. I needed a lot of catching up to do those last two qualifiers.
Yeah, and then we had a tie in those qualifier points. So rather than having a top 8, we're having a top 9, and you're one of them.
Yeah, which I'm excited. I was going to be really disappointed. I've been able to sneak in to both of the first 2 tournaments, and I was like, man, I want to do 3. I want to go 3 for 3. And I was like, man, I'm gonna go out here with just like a whimper. And as Red Bay pointed out in the article, you know, I have some unfinished business in the tournament round. I've not been able to get past that first round. Is this the year? You know, I'm finding my stride at the right time. You know,
there you go.
They talk about that in sports. You know,
hot goalie.
Yeah, exactly. You know, go with the hot hand. So I'm hoping maybe I got the hot hand here.
Do we have a comp for what's the sports team that's always coming in 8th seed in the playoffs?
I would say it's my very own Indiana Pacers for several years, and this year was the exception. You know, maybe I can be just like the Pacers this year, but for many years we were like always 6th, 7th seed, and then would just get bounced in the first round. But we refused to tank, so.
All right.
Maybe this is the year that I go make a deep run, just like the Pacers did.
All right. I'm rooting for you.
Thanks, Tim. And that's great because you're a judge. So since you're rooting for me, I know that I have your votes going into the tournament round. That's great to hear. Yeah, your check's in the mail.
Judging's so funny because I actually thought that it would be harder doing judging to like ignore who made the card, but no, I just look straight at the card and I just see what it tells me.
So I did wonder that, can the judges see who makes the card? Because one of the unique things about Design League is there's not a lot of hidden information. No one's very cagey. You know, in other design competitions, it's like you need to erase the number on the bottom of your card. You have to there can be nothing that could possibly link you to this card. And the whole time I'm doing is like, I'm submitting cards with these like the set symbol from MSE. I accidentally made like gigantic, so I got this giant square on the right side of my cards, and I'm like, well, it's obvious who's submitting the ones with the giant square because I submit all of my cards like that. This is good to know.
I think we can see who made the cards when we're judging. I think just the amount of words you have to write while you're judging means that you have to like just be looking at the card, write some stuff, look at the card, write some stuff, look at the card, write some stuff. If it was just scores, I can imagine, I'll give it to them. Like if I'm just writing one number, it might be easier to like let it influence you. But when you write it out and then you reread what you wrote and then the other judges read what you wrote, like that sort of tells you what the score is supposed to be. More so than like what I feel like giving the card. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a little bit more. Yeah, you have something kind of backing up what your numbers got to end up being at the end of the day.
I actually don't know what it's like to read a bunch of feedback on your cards. You know what I mean? How does that feel for you? Like, you know, you didn't win the challenge, but you're just reading like 4 or 6 blurbs about your card.
Man, how is it? I think it's generally fun to just know people are looking at your custom Magic cards and have thoughts and opinions on it. And so even if they're forced to, which I assume that Red Bay has you all locked up in some sort of room and just inserts like an iPad with the Magic cards and demands feedback.
Yeah.
I think the one thing is that can be tough is like when you were trying to communicate something and it just missed on all of the judges. And like something that I kind of stopped going for, what I realized was like, I have no clue what these judges want. Like the first 2 design qualifier or the first 2 design leagues, I felt like I had a really good sense on the judges. And part of that was the judges were the same people every time. So So I could really know, like, this is what I'm expecting Tim to say. This is what I'm expecting Caillou to say. But because the judges were rotating, it was really hard to nail down what I could expect from any given judges. I remember I submitted a card for the courtesy challenge, and I went through like maybe 50 different mechanics for courtesy before I finally landed on one that like met all the criteria I had set in my head. And then when I submitted that card, the feedback was basically like, it almost felt like the feedback was, the criteria you set in your head seems so unnecessary. Like, I was like, I want it to be good in single player. Well, the judges were cool with multiplayer cards. I wanted to feel like not just like favoring your opponent. I wanted you to be in total control of it. Well, the card that won, your opponents were in control of the positive effects. So like, I started less trying to predict what the judges were going to say and more just designing cards that I was like, this is a card that excites me and I'm passionate about and is communicating what I want to communicate to the judges. And I think that was a much better strategy than trying to figure out what the judges wanted. And then the feedback was a lot more of like, hey, I understand what you're going for with this card, or like, ooh, I see this and this is really exciting. That felt really rambling. So if you need to cut that down, you go.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll pick out some pieces. Yeah.
And it's cool. I think it's really cool that different people can look at a Magic card and have vastly different reactions to it.
In the older design leagues, we'd try to come to a consensus. Like, we'd all try to agree on where we came on for each card. And here now with more judges and scoring, like, we just all give our impressions, and then the averages kind of tell us who comes out at the top. I think like maybe it means that just kind of the general appeal of cards wins out more often rather than the specific things that individual people like. And maybe that gives us higher quality results overall. Is that what we're trying to do? Are we trying to make cards that the most people would like? Is that the right way to run a competition? Popularity.
I don't think that's what I was trying to do. I never really thought the two cards I felt the strongest about, I was trying to communicate something extremely specific. And I don't know if all of what I was trying to communicate got through, but the scores reflected that was a better method than just trying to like design a card that I thought all 6 of the judges would find appealing. I just designed a card and then I tweaked that. I designed a card. I said, I want to communicate this. And then I tweaked it until it felt into the realm of like, this card could be a real printed Magic card. So almost working backwards. First, you have to figure out what you want to say. And then you figure out what the little, what the knobs are on that card. That's when you start turning the knobs.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Huh.
But yeah, I didn't feel like the 2 cards that I did the best on, I did not feel like those cards were designed for anybody but me. Like, I was designing those cards as my own. Like, okay. I like this card. I'm going to submit this card that I like. And then if I get a bad score, at least I like my own card.
Fair enough. Alrighty. Anything else we want to talk about on this wrap up here? I just love looking at cards. I just love looking at Magic cards. Maybe that's why I have a podcast about looking at Magic cards. But I'm having a good time.
Maybe that's why you judge a design competition where you just look at a ton of Magic cards.
Yeah. So I love I have no spoiler season fatigue because I just love looking at Magic cards.
Yeah, I'm excited for the tournament. I think this might be this is a really strong pool of competitors. I felt like during the qualifying rounds, the pool was really strong. And yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting. So stay tuned. Try and stay locked into the tournament rounds and keep tabs on people. And if you played in the qualifiers, your job doesn't stop because the tournament rounds is when contestants need even more feedback. We will have, last year we had each contestant would create their own thread and you could delve into their thread and they'd just be kind of posting their ideas freelance, like just spitballing, trying to get cards out because, you know, the competition becomes more intense. The demands of the prompts become more intense and you have to design more cards and they have to fit a more demanding structure, and the competition really ramps up. So should get exciting.
Yeah. You're going to be doing multiple cards per challenge and all that too. So it becomes even a little bit harder there.
Mhm.
All right. That's about it for the main content of our episode for this week. But as always, we have our monthly challenge.
Our July design challenge is 777 Jackpot. Design a fixing card using at least one mechanic that was first printed or previewed in 2024. And then, as always, we have some bonus points. From Juliet, we have Jewel Lie. Jewel is in like the diamond or ring, a jewel on a ring. Give it a heist flair or flavor. And then Platy's bonus point was July the 4th be with you. Put the number 4 in the cost or rules text of the card.
Yep. You know, this July bonus points sort of says like, hey, we're making like a valuable object. That seems to be like a starting point here, at least to me. You have to sneak in to grab this thing that now can provide you some mana. But if you're not trying to do heist stuff, this is a fixing card. It doesn't necessarily have to totally generate mana. It could filter mana. I think people probably will get some treasure cards, stuff like that too. And then we got to get some new mechanics, something that was first shown off in 2024, whether it's one of the sets like Thunder Junction or if it's something upcoming like Bloomburrow.
Yeah. What do you think the feeling is on Roman numerals? Do you think Platy is accepting of IV on the rules text of a card?
Like if you have the word live, does that count?
No, I was thinking more of a saga with 4 chapters.
Oh. Okay, that's less sneaky than I thought you were trying to suggest. Fury of the Hive.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad to know you have such a high opinion of me when I'm tackling these design challenges.
I've read many years of people sneaking their way through bonus points. So we've got sort of the Thunder Junction thing of like spree and crimes and outlaws and stuff like that. We also have literal heist from Alchemy in Thunder Junction. But we also had some murder mystery stuff earlier this year. What else did we have this year? We had the Fallout Commander decks.
We have Assassin's Creed.
Fallout? Assassin's Creed, yep.
If you want to do Universes Beyond, Bloomburrow and Duskmoor are coming up. Has anything new been spoiled, as mechanics wise? I think Duskmoor has some weird mechanical stuff with enchantment creatures.
Impending, which are like enchantment creatures that I guess kind of like Theros gods, they're not a creature at first, and then over time they emerge and become a creature, but they give you that effect the whole time.
And that might be a good way to incorporate that 4.
Yeah.
With those, because I think it's like they're kind of like a time where you do something enough times, or like time wears out, and then or time runs out, and put the number 4 there.
Yeah. When do we start getting like the full Bloomburrow previews? It's probably this month, right? Because it comes out in a month and a half or whatever.
Earlier you said that you never get tired of previews. I haven't looked at a preview in many sets.
Actually, it's this week. So anyone who wants to look at Bloomburrow previews is already doing so by the time this episode's posted. So we'll probably at least know all the main mechanics of the set by then.
This has to be like the narrowest window for a podcast dating themselves, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. You know what? Let's put it on the table. We're recording this July 7th, and the previews start July 9th. So this is the only time where we could have been this useless. Alrighty. I'm looking forward to all the little cute animals, but I'm also looking forward to all of your submissions. They're always great to review. Kind of like the Design League, this is your way to get people to look at your cards and give feedback. These monthly challenges, we talk about them on the pod rather than writing up the feedback, but it's the same sort of idea. We're going to kind of break down your cards, see their potential, talk through all the different ideas we get after reading those cards. So that'll be due at the end of July 26th. And that's the end of our podcast for the week. Hop onto the Discord. And actually, if you're interested in this Design League stuff, Red Bay's been putting up like big, long, extensive articles about all the Design League things. So if you want to get to know all the contestants, that article just went up. And then each round, I think we've also been getting articles from Red Bay. So if you want to read up and look at all the cards instead of just hearing about the cards, and you're not really into Discord yet, just head to beaconofcreation.com. Before we get out of here, though, I'm usually needling you. You're probably waited. You got it locked and loaded. The Mono Whiteboarder movie rec.
See, 2 weeks ago, I took a little trip to South Carolina, a little business trip. I was speaking to somebody in the bars, and naturally, I couldn't help myself. I started talking about movies, and they had a little movie recommendation. So if you want to watch along, I'll be watching this movie this week. It's called The Wizard.
The Wizard.
And it's like it's a 1980s kids movie about some kid who's really good.
Oh, hell yeah.
About some kid who's really good at video games. Yeah, so this guy in a bar in South Carolina recommended it to me, and I'm passing it on to all of you. He said it makes him cry every time he watches it.
Oh, the main character of that movie looked exactly like my brother did at that in that year. What's his name? Fred Savage. Yeah, they're like the same age. They looked exactly the same. So whenever I see The Wizard, I think of my brother Chris. Also, some great product placement. It's one of the all-time product placement movies.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Fred Savage, aka the kid from Princess Bride. Let's go.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Spitting image of Chris Riley. And Jenny Lewis, future musician. She was just a child actress at the time, but future kind of like pop country, alt country sort of singer.
There we go. So got some free Tim lore on the podcast today too. Wow. Tim has a brother.
That's true. Yep. It's about a little kid who wants to be very good at playing Nintendo.
Yeah.
And runs away from home in order to do that. I guess this would be more plausible today than it was 35 years ago or whatever.
I don't feel like it's unplausible. You think it's more plausible that a kid runs away to become a Nintendo champion?
I guess running away is more difficult now in the internet age. So,
but easier to become a Nintendo champion.
That's true. Yeah, maybe that's where I was coming at it. Yeah. It's more plausible that a 10-year-old wins $100,000 now.
So the remake has a different tension point, really. The remake is more on the competitive Nintendo scene than the running away scene.
Yeah. You wouldn't have to explain to people what a video game competition is, like you might have.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we'll look forward to that. If you need to get in contact with us between then and now, find us on the Discord. I'm Tim F. Riley, and you're Mono Whiteboarder. And thanks for listening.